The 2025 season is over. How did your favorite team do this year? We pulled report cards and we're ready to talk about them.
Welcome back to First and Short, your first place to get short bits of college football news and analysis. I'm Aaron, and I'm here with my co-host Mashfik, and we have a lot to talk about today. I get it. I know what you're saying. The college football season is over. It's officially over. So what is there to talk about? Well, I think it's a good opportunity to go back and analyze how your teams did. We pulled some parameters. We did some analysis, and we're going to go parameter by parameter, talking about some of your favorite teams this year and where they may have fell short at, where they may have succeeded at. All of that.
Yeah, Aaron, we were discussing, do we want to do like the preseason AP top 25? Do we want to do the end of the season top 25? How do we get this into a realm where people we're providing the most help? So this is what we did, man. We took both of those lists. We grabbed what we thought is moving the needle, the teams that people want to hear about. If we only looked at the preseason, we might not have covered Indiana. Look, lo and behold, they're the national champions, so we have to talk about them, right? So we built a list of about 30 teams. We're going to talk about them over the course of the next month or so. And listen, we built our own report card, right? So Aaron, why don't you talk about what our report card parameters are and how we're going to grade all these teams?
Absolutely. So the parameters basically consist of 5 different items. So we have, the expected record that most analysts thought the team was going to win, that over and under sweet spot number. We're going to grade them on their coaching, whether that's, it's a new hire, it's how the coach overall excelled this season.
And not just head coach, but some of their, coordinators as well.
Exactly. We're also going to diagnose the offense and defense and how well they performed on the year. Then we're also going to take a look and see, okay, what was the team's best win and worst loss? Comparing their ceiling and their floor and seeing if we can get a grade out of that. And then lastly, we're going to see how well they prepare for the future, right? With this new dynamic and this new era of college football, you have to see how teams are preparing now in the portal and in recruiting in high school. So it's not just a one-sided getting kids or that are 18 and 17 years old. You got to prepare to win now.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was our kind of report card parameters. They're all weighted kind of evenly, but Aaron and I, we're both the dean. We're the provost. All those titles. We're eventually going to give each of those a grade, and then we're going to give each team a final grade. Today, we're going to cover 3 teams. We're going to cover Indiana, of course. They're the hottest team in the sport right now. We're going to see how they did. Not to ruin the story, but they did pretty well. We're going to cover Texas, and we're going to talk about Penn State at the end as well. So, Aaron, why don't you start us off with Indiana? What is their report card looking like this year? For this year
Absolutely.
And looking forward to next year.
Yeah, starting off in the Big Ten. So that first parameter we talked about, expected record versus actual record. Without a doubt, going to give them an A+ here, right? The preseason expectation for them was to win around 8.5 wins, right? So we saw that amazing season they had last year. Yet analysts were like, okay, they're still going to do decent, but they're going to fall off a little bit. Most analysts even saw them going 9-3 and, maybe sneaking into an expanded playoff. Boy, everybody was wrong. First ever in the modern era to go 16-0. Indiana, they became the team to do this. And it's something that hasn't been seen by the world since Yale in 1894. So over 100 years of history before this milestone has been hit again.
Very elite Yale team back in the 1800s for sure. Cool. Yeah. So I think we gave them an A+ on that one. Can't really do much better. First team to ever get 16-0 in the modern era. So that's great. Coaching, we're going to have to give out another A+ here. Kurt Signetti, I mean, not enough nice things can be said about the guy. Maybe he can smile more. Maybe we should give him an A minus. No, I'm just kidding. A plus. Obviously a program altering force. I was watching like an ESPN little snippet of him. He came into IU and he just noticed how low energy that whole campus was. And so his first kind of announcement at that basketball game, he was like, I got to get these guys riled up, right? And so that's just the energy that he brought in just his second season. You know, he obviously delivered a Big Ten title and a national championship. No need to Google him anymore. Everybody knows about him. They one interesting stat I saw that I think can relate directly back to coaching. The Hoosiers went 15 consecutive games without losing a single fumble, and that's the only team to do so since 2004. And so, again, I think that's coaching, that's fundamentals, and an extra point of fanfare here, I guess you can say. The defensive coordinator Bryant Haynes, he's a Broyles Award finalist, so the Broyles Award goes to the best coordinator in the league, and so he's still a finalist. They're going to announce that in a few weeks in February, and so again, just goes to how great this entire coaching staff is.
Yep, yep. Absolutely. So again, we gave them an A plus on the coaching. I believe they deserve it with how quickly they turned this team into what they are today in a matter of a couple of years. Um, Next, we're gonna, look at the offense and defense. So the grade we're gonna give them is an A here. Um, and again, Indiana finished the year as a top tier balanced juggernaut, right? On offense. Of course, they were led by their Heisman winner, Fernando Mendoza. Um, and the offense averaged, I believe, 41.6 points per game. A big part of that was Mendoza being so surgical. He threw for 3,500 yards on the year, 41 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. And that's why he was a Heisman winner, guys. They ranked third in scoring, so nationally, they're right there at that top tier level. On defense, on the other side of the ball, the multiple 4-2-5 scheme under Bryant Haynes was a nightmare. Only allowing 11.7 points per game, very, very elite. Second in scoring. They were specifically elite against the run. They ranked second nationally by only allowing about 77.2 rushing yards a game.
Yeah, crazy stats on the defensive side. Just goes to show why Bryant Haynes is even in that short list for best coordinators. Aaron, I was hoping you could provide a little bit more context on what that multiple 4-2-5 meant. Is that like some type of option, or what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, yeah. So that's basically setting up, how the defense is lined up. They got four down linemen. So that's the first layer of it. Two linebackers, and then five is going to be the secondary, where you got some guys that can either come in to play, I guess those star positions that you see, the rover, robber, outside linebacker, safety hybrid, and then you got your corners in play. So yeah,
Okay,
it,
gotcha,
yep.
gotcha. Cool. Let's talk about their best win and worst loss. Well, they didn't lose any, so this is just going to be now. We're going to give them an A plus here, but in all honesty, the best wins were by these guys, right? I've been saying all season that that away game at Oregon was the best win all season. For them to beat Oregon again when they did in the playoffs, that was great. To beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, like these, you can take any number of those, and those are all the hardest games to play, and they won all of them, most of them pretty convincingly. And so, but definitely that Big Ten championship, it was a moment where Indiana proved that they weren't just like a Cinderella. They were like, oh, this is a for serious team, right? They took down the Titans of the conference. They weren't able to beat Ohio State last year, but this year they were able to do it in a really defensive slugfest. I mentioned they beat Oregon twice, and then yeah. So I mean, there's what was they had a couple close games, but even that Penn State game, I think that would have been like the worst loss if that counted, but that ended up being a very impressive win. So, yeah, A plus there across the board.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look at the run they had on their last, I believe, 4 games, beat Ohio State, blew out Alabama, beat
Yeah.
Oregon for the second time, and then you beat arguably the hottest team second to you in the college football playoff, Miami. So
Just an impressive run. I mean, they didn't slip up, and if you take if you take the top, like, 10 most impressive wins, no matter what your kinda standard is, they have, like, 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the guys did not come to play.
right.
Um, moving on. So our last parameter that we have is portal and preparation for the future. We're gonna give him an A minus here. Signetti, he has used the portal as a surgical tool rather than a clutch, right? So 2025, we saw that in action. He brought in some key additions, the Heisman winner, Fernando Mendoza. The big receiver we saw catching all those back shoulder passes, Elijah Surratt. You know, he proved to be the lottery ticket to help go on that championship run. Um, looking ahead into 2026, um, they've already landed, you know, their apparent heir to the quarterback throne. They got Josh Hoover out of TCU. He's thrown it for over 9,000 yards in his career, so I'm sure he'll step into this offense and almost keep it just as productive. um, Big shoes to fill, but they're confident in him, obviously. They have a top 10 transfer class featuring names like Nick Marsh, Michigan State wide receiver that they played against. They saw his spurt, and Signetti
Yeah.
said they need you. Um, they got AJ Harris, the DB who once played at UGA and Penn State, coming there. And then, yeah, got a lot of other guys on the team. I think they had a total of around 31 guys coming in. Uh, don't quote me on that, but I think that's on the slides. Yeah, the Hoosiers, they are not going anywhere. That we should see them competing at the same level of play next year. Championships aren't promised, but I promise they'll be very close to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cool. Sounds good. Let's move on. Let's move down south a little bit. Let's go to Texas. They finished the season 10-3. They missed the CFP this year. They won their regular season finale against, Texas A&M, and they won their bowl game against Michigan. So that's kind of how the season ended for the Longhorns. One stat that really surprised me, and it's an area of a concern. Penalties. They had 8.3 penalties per game this year, and so that'll definitely hit their coaching grade a bit. Actually, it probably should hit a little bit more than we gave them credit for, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Expected record versus actual record. Look, these guys started the season preseason number one. Their expectation was to win 10 and a half, so basically 11 games. And they didn't, right? Their actual record was 10-3, so very close. But while a 10-win season in the SEC is, objectively great, the B plus is the fact that, again, they were number one coming in. They missed the playoffs. But they got a little bump for finishing strong and beating another big brand like Michigan in the Citrus Bowl to eventually get to that double-digit win season. But for a lot of Longhorn fans, considering who they have on their roster and what the outlook was looking like defensively and Arch Manning and all that hoopla, B plus will get you a degree, but it wasn't good enough for Longhorn fans.
Exactly, exactly. Um, moving on to coaching. So we're going to give coaching a B. Again, Steve Sarkisian, he continues to recruit and develop at an elite level. But the 2025 season was a bit of a, what if and regarding game management. Some of the good we saw. So Steve Sarkisian, he went undefeated in rivalry games. I feel like that's a key as a coach and job security, beating both Oklahoma, who was 20, they beat them 23-6, and Texas A&M 27-17. Both college football playoff teams, might I add.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his ability to keep the team focused through the Arch Manning versus the world media circus was very, very masterful. He obviously has that locker room won over. The critique on our end is going to be, the offense as they went through this strange, stagnant periods and big games, especially in losses to Ohio State and Georgia, where the play calling felt, uncharacteristically conservative. So again,
Yeah.
they get a B there.
Yeah, I agree with the B. I know we agreed on a B. I could see a potentially lower grade just for those penalties that we talked about
Mhm.
that kept moving them backwards when they should have been moving forwards. And then of course they did great against their rivals, but against the biggest some of the biggest games, Ohio State and Georgia, for them to fall apart the ways that they did, that I could see that being another like ding for that specific grade. But I'm okay with a B. I'm okay with a B there. Let's move on to offense and defense. How they did in those units. So we give them a B plus here. Offense, they had 30.5 points per game. It was very efficient. They were good at they were both good at passing at times. Arch Manning looked inconsistent. We'll say running game was not as good as it was a couple years ago. It just really lacked that explosive knockout punch that we were used to seeing from a Steve Sarkisian led Longhorn offense. They were ranked 27th nationally in scoring. That's pretty decent. But a lot of times we saw the offensive line was struggling with pressure. Arch Manning was having to deal with just too much pressure in his face. He showed flashes of brilliance, but also showed flashes of just incompetence. So, not what we were expecting from Arch this year. The defense, they were pretty good. 20.3 points per game allowed. This was definitely the backbone of the team. The reason they got 10 wins was a lot of the times because of the defense. They had a top 15 rushing defense, and they were pretty good at forcing turnovers. They finished fifth in the nation in turnover margin. So all of that gets them that B plus.
Yep. Moving on. So we gotta, go through their schedule. We have to sift through and see what their best win and worst loss was. So I'm gonna start with the worst loss. I think it's unarguably the loss they had at Florida. They lost 21-29. This was the game that most likely cost them a playoff spot, right? Florida was an unranked underdog, and the Longhorns, they just turned the ball over at critical moments and then failing to capitalize on a game that was, could have been a could have been a surge late in the fourth quarter to take them over. So again, that key third loss is what made them so controversial and being on the line of getting in or out of the playoffs. Now to counter it, their best win was their last game of the regular season. So they ended on a very good note. They beat at the time, number 7 Texas A&M 27-17. Uh Going into College Station and silencing, a top 10 Aggie team when a high stakes rivalry game was definitely the peak of their season. It proved that, Texas is currently the big brother in the state. So positive note to end the regular season there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we talked about it before, but that A&M, it kept A&M was supposed to go to the SEC championship game, right? So because Texas won that one, Georgia was able to go. So shout out to Texas for that one. Sounds good. Portal and preparation for the future. We gave them A in this one. So Steve Sarkisian, he's been very aggressive in the portal. We saw a bunch of people leave, and we figured that's because they're clearing up that cap space. And sure enough, they got Cam Coleman and Hollywood Smothers, two of some of the biggest names on the offensive side of the ball, to give Arch Manning some more weapons. So it seems like yes, they're prepared for the future. We'll give them an A here, but it also seems like this is maybe a last ditch effort, kind of a final trump card, so to speak. And so, if it doesn't work out, then what does 2 years from now look like? Is Steve Sarkisian still there? Are these guys still there? In the near future, for the next year, I think they're set up for an A. In the if it doesn't work out 3 years from now, maybe that's a lower grade. But yeah, that's what we're thinking. So final grade here. What did we give? Final grade, we give a B. I think that's a good final grade, consider all things considered.
Yep. Yep. They found a way to save, what they could from their season towards the end as they started to find a little bit of rhythm, right? Um, Moving on to our final team of the night. So we got, Penn State. and they were, the talk of the country for a more turbulent reason versus these other teams. This had to be, their most chaotic year in Happy Valley in over a decade. Um, Ending with a complete uh, change in coaching personnel, um, total roster overhaul. So here's the report card for the Penn State Nittany Lions. So expected record versus actual record. Preseason expectation, as everybody thought, they were ranked number 2 in the nation and were a consensus pick for the Big Ten championship and possibly the college football playoff and the national championship. So we expected them to have uh, over 10 wins. The line was set at 10.5. Their actual record, 7-6. The reality of it was, it was a historic just collapse from greatness, right? They started
Yeah.
out 3-0. Wheels fell off after a brutal 6-game losing streak, and it was, I guess, technically, salvaged by a winning record by sweeping, a weak November slate and then winning the Pinstripe Bowl. But for a team that started in the top two, this was pretty much a disaster for them.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, F. There's really no better way to put it. F.
Yeah.
Although I guess they could have lost more games, in which case they would be what, F minus. But um, a lot of this seems to be a lot of the grades that we're gonna give Penn State. I think could be even like at the institutional level, like the people who are making the decisions. Um, at the higher level, like above James Franklin. We're not going to go into that deep, but just want to put that out there. They lost to Oregon, they lost to Northwestern, and then you fire your coach. I think that's what it was, something along those lines. And then of course, everything else, all the wheels fall off. So in any case, you know, we'll move on to the next subject, coaching. We give that a D minus. So obviously we had the James Franklin era come to an end after week 6. Following that loss to Northwestern, it dropped them to 3-3 actually. So then the program just moved on for him. Terry Smith took over, and the team went 4-3 under his watch. And the team showed a lot of fight late. The team really rallied around this guy, a person who's been around the program for a long time. But I think Penn State made one of the biggest splashes in the coaching carousel by hiring Matt Campbell, and he will be leading the program soon. So that D minus I expect to change drastically next season. But right now, with how bad, I mean, you could say they were the catalyst for the entire coaching carousel for the entire kind of league. But yeah, for how that kind of shook out, D minus for sure.
Mhm. For sure, for sure. Moving on to offense and defense, we're gonna give them a C here. Again, it was a season of what if. You had your star quarterback coming back from a college football playoff semifinal, right? And Drew Aller, um, struggled to stay consistent, and then of course he had the season-ending injury, so the job eventually went to Ethan Grunkemeyer, uh, who, I mean, he's not even with the program anymore. Freshman gone and followed James Franklin, actually. Um, the bright spot for them was definitely Katron Allen. He became Penn State's all-time leading rusher this year. Um, Alone in this season, he had over 1,300 yards rushing. Um, on the def- on the defensive side of the ball, under coordinator Jim Knowles, they only allowed, about 20.5 points per game. The defense was statistically solid, but it broke down in the clutch. They lost 3 games this year by a single point or in overtime. So, you got that Oregon game, you got Northwestern, and you got Iowa. Very close games that could potentially change the dynamic of your season a little bit and the grade, right? Um, the defensive front, they remained elite. They were led by Danny Dennis Sutton, and he tied a school record with 3 block punts. So that's actually a very interesting statistic there. Um, Again, not the worst, but it wasn't a great year for them when you look at their sides of the ball individually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about their best win and worst losses. So I think their best win was right near the end. The 22 versus 10 win against Clemson in the Pinstripe Bowl. It was really just a statement of we still believe in each other. We're still a team. Really a moment of resilience. So I I've got to say, playing in Yankee Stadium, it actually looked pretty cool. So I put all that together to make this their best win, and gives them some momentum for Matt Campbell coming in afterwards. Their worst loss has to be that Northwestern loss, losing by a point there. But that was really, they lost more games after that, but that was the rock bottom moment. Since they lost their, I mean, Hall of Fame coach, probably. He's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. So just, losing a coach like that, after their third loss of the season, and they were a 20-point favorite at home. So that definitely was their worst loss. We will give them, in this category, a D on that one.
Yep. And then finally, you got to talk about the future. This year is terrible, but how do they prepare for the future and in the portal? We're going to give them an A. In terms of volume,
Yeah,
if you think the roster looks different next year for Penn State, you're right. It's currently undergoing the largest single season transformation in college football history. We're going to call it the Great Migration, right? The There's over 50 players who left the program via the portal or graduation. So that's easily half of a program's team, right? And then with the Matt Campbell hire, you have the Iowa State pipeline. He essentially brought his old team with him, right? Penn State has signed 39 transfers. 23 of them are from Iowa State. So majority of them are coming. A key addition that we should mention from Iowa State, Rocco Beck, quarterback. So he'll lead the offense. And then, they've had a massive influx of Big 12 talent as well. So Campbell, he essentially hit a reset on the entire culture in State College. And it'll be interesting to see what type of team they'll have next year.
for sure, for sure. So I think that gives them a final grade. Once we distill all that down, Penn State gets a D for this season. So that's all the teams that we had report cards for today. We have an idea of who we want to cover for the next episode, but if there's a team you specifically want to see, let us know in the comments, and we'll try to bump them up, try to get them covered before we move too far ahead. So, Aaron, I think those were a good set of report cards to start with. I'm excited to see who else we cover next time around.
Exactly. We're making our way around the NCAA, so don't be surprised if you see your school on here next episode.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll be back next time. Thanks.